Nobody in Caldwell Crossing talked about Harley Thornwell the way they talked about other men. They didn't swap stories about him over dinner or argue about his character at the feed store. They simply went quiet. A particular kind of quiet, the sort that falls over a room when someone mentions a thing that everyone agrees is better left alone. His property sat at the far edge of town, separated from the nearest neighbor by nearly 2 miles of dry brush and red clay road. The house itself was large, well-built, and almost entirely dark at night. People said he preferred it that way. People said a lot of things about Harley Thornwell. What was certain was this: in 11 years, not a single person in Caldwell Crossing had knocked on that door and been glad they did. By which made what Clara Alderton did on the night of October 3rd all the more remarkable. She hadn't planned it. That was the truth she would turn over in her mind for a long time afterward. That none of it was planned. Not the running, not the rain, and certainly not the house. The argument with her father had begun at supper, the way most things in the Alderton household began, quietly, then all at once. Gerald Alderton had set down his fork with a particular kind of deliberateness that Inns had learned to dread over 23 years of living under his roof. It meant he had already decided something. It meant the conversation was not a conversation at all, but an announcement dressed up to look like one. "Hector Baines has made an offer," her father said. "A fair one. I've accepted." Inz had gone still. Hector Baines was 51 years old. He owned the largest cattle operation in the county and smiled at women the way a man smiles at land he's already purchased. She had spoken to him exactly 4 times in her life, and each time she had walked away feeling smaller than when she'd started. "You accepted," she repeated. "The wedding will be in the spring." Gerald picked his fork back up. "You'll want to start on a dress." She had sat there for a long moment, hands folded in her lap, the way her mother had taught her. Then she pushed back her chair, walked to her room, and began to pack a bag. Not everything, just what she could carry. She was out the back door before her father finished his coffee. The rain found her about a mile out of town. It came sideways, the way October rain in that part of Texas had a habit of doing it. Cold and immediate, and entirely without mercy. Inns pulled her coat tighter and kept walking. She had a cousin in Marsville, 2 towns east, and a general idea of the road that led there. That was enough. It had to be enough. But the road turned muddy fast, and the darkness came down hard, and somewhere between the 3rd and 4th mile marker, she realized she could no longer see her own feet. The lantern she'd grabbed from the porch had gone out in the wind 20 minutes earlier. She was wet through to her collar. Her boots were pulling against the sucking mud with every step. And the night had the particular kind of silence that makes a person feel very alone and very far from anything good. She nearly walked past the house entirely. It appeared through the rain like something half imagined. A shape at first, a large and dark against the gray sky, then a roofline, then a porch, a house, a real one, with the walls and a door and the promise of dry ground. She didn't know whose it was. In that moment, she didn't care. She pushed through the gate, crossed the yard, climbed the porch steps, and tried the door. It opened. Inside was dark but dry, and she nearly wept from the relief of it. She stood in the doorway long enough to shake the worst of the rain from her coat, then stepped in and pulled the door shut behind her. The room she found herself in was a sitting room of some kind. She could make that much out from the faint light coming through the front window. A stone fireplace on the far wall, a table, 2 chairs, the remains of a fire, still faintly orange in the grate. Someone had been here recently. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she would dry out, rest an hour, and be gone before first light. No one would ever know she'd been here. She crossed to the fireplace, crouched down, and held her hands toward the warmth of the coals. That was when she heard it. A floorboard somewhere behind her, and above. The slow, deliberate creak of weight shifting on old wood. Then another. Then the sound of boots on a staircase. Inns did not move. She had grown up in a house where knowing when to stay still was a survival skill. So she stayed still now, hands extended toward a fire that was no longer warming her. And she listened to the footsteps descend the stairs one at a time, unhurried, unafraid, until they reached the bottom and stopped. The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough to be unbearable. "You're in my house." The voice was low, not loud, but not angry. Exactly, just certain. The way a man is certain when he is standing on his own ground and has no reason to pretend otherwise. Enns turned slowly. He was tall. She registered that first. Then the fact that he was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite place. Not fury, not alarm. Something more measured than either of those things. His hair was dark, pushed back from his face, and there was a stillness about him that she associated with men who had learned a long time ago that raising their voice was a waste of energy. She recognized him then, not his face. She had never been close enough for that, but the shape of him, the way he stood, the particular quality of the quiet he carried. She had heard his name her whole life, spoken in hushed tones across church pews and general store counters. Harley Thornwell. She was standing dripping rainwater onto the floor of the most feared man in Caldwell Crossing, and he was looking at her like he was genuinely unsure what to do with that fact. Inns straightened her spine. Her voice, when it came, was steadier than she had any right to expect. "I didn't know whose house it was," she said. "I was caught in the rain. I'll leave." She meant it. She was already turning toward the door. "The creek on the South Road flooded an hour ago," Harley said. "You won't get far." She stopped. He hadn't moved from the foot of the stairs. He wasn't blocking her way. He wasn't threatening her. He was simply telling her something true in the same tone a person uses to mention the weather. Inns turned back slowly. She looked at the door. She looked at him. She thought about Hector Baines and her father's fork, sat down with such quiet finality, and about how she had walked out into a storm rather than sit still and let her future be handed to someone else. Then she looked at Harley Thornwell again, really looked at him and found that whatever she had expected to see in the face of a man the whole town feared, it wasn't this. He looked tired, not dangerous, just tired and alone and faintly puzzled by the wet, stubborn woman standing in the middle of his sitting room at 10 o'clock at night. "Sit," he said finally. "I'll put some wood on the fire." He said it the way a man says something he's already thought through and decided. Not an invitation, but not a command either. Something in between. Something that left the choice entirely with her. Inns stood there for a moment longer, and then she sat. The fire was rebuilt before either of them said another word. And somewhere in that long, warm silence, something shifted. Something neither of them had a name for yet, and neither of them was quite ready to examine. But it was there. What Inns didn't know, what she couldn't have known sitting in that chair with her wet boots drying by the fire, was why the whole town feared him. And what Harley Thornwell didn't know was that the woman sitting across from him was carrying a secret of her own, one that would reach this house before morning did. Inns woke to the smell of coffee. For a brief, unguarded moment, the kind that exists only in the first few seconds before memory catches up. She didn't know where she was. She was aware of warmth and the sound of wind outside and a blanket across her shoulders that she didn't remember pulling there. Next coming soon. Follow the channel, True Stories Vault. For next part, subscribe and likes.